Hello, friends. This is Cassandra Joan Butler, and I'm with you during the Holy Week of 2020 with the intention to offer to you some information about the path of healing during this week and beyond. Really, this information I want to share with you is a template for the entire year in many ways, but it's based on the astrology of 2020, which is the year of transformation. And globally, as I am taping this, we are still in the midst of the global pandemic, and it is triggering all sorts of fears, anxieties, concerns, which are coming forefront in our awareness through the path of Chiron. And during Holy Week, that is the full moon week after the spring equinox, where many religions, of course, celebrate Passover and Easter, this particular week is a apex in the healing journey. But it's the information I'm sharing with you is going to be relevant for the whole year. So having said that, I want to extend my best wishes for you and your family to do healing of any sort possible, whether it be for mind, body, and spirit. And it's, again, an amazing opportunity for individual and collective healing. And so we are going to go through a PowerPoint designed to give you some Easter time, Holy Week tips, which again are relevant throughout the entire year. So let's go and do some astrology. This year has been marked by what we call the Great Capricorn lineup, which took place on January 12th, 2020. You can see it on the chart. The Great Capricorn lineup included Saturn and Pluto and also Ceres. All right, this is the asteroid Ceres. So my job is to try to communicate what the meanings of these major planets are, and that they are lined up in the sign of Capricorn, which is quite rare. The last time they were lined up in Capricorn, they line up with some regularity, but the last time in Capricorn was some 500 years ago. You see, Saturn was referred to Mr. Grumpy, right? Grumpy old man. It's many things. I mean, we're not trying to pick on Saturn as a planet. It is the planet of gravity. It's the planet of structure. It's the planet of reality. It's the planet of manifestation. It gets things done. But because of its rings, it is also the quintessential energy of boundaries, right? So Pluto, let's just refer to him as Dr. Death. They are kissing in the sky here in January, a unique lineup, and it's affecting the entire year. They're also lined up. I don't have a little written thing on Ceres, but let's talk about Ceres. We are all familiar with Ceres. Ceres is the Earth Mother. She's Demeter. She's the asteroid of the grain, food, nurturance, supplies, right? So we could make it a sentence that in January was the entrance to this year where we would have a restructuring of our world relative to the necessities of life, food and supplies, toilet paper. I mean, everything we really need. And this restructuring on a global level is taking place in the sign of structure, which is Capricorn, business, governments, global companies, banking. So it's the restructure of our structure. So not even talking about the virus right now. We're talking about the hallmark and the impulse to restructure the business of doing business. Okay, so it's like the blending of the beasties, right? Here's an image that evokes Saturn, the hermit, the wise old man, not just the grumpy old man, the energy of wisdom, holding his own light, but doing it singularly, and having the wisdom of going into silence and counsel. And death is both an illusion. I love this image here. It's both the skull, but it's also the person holding the hat on top. So death is multi-layered in its symbolism. These are the emotions we're trying to heal during the virus crisis. These are the emotions that are going to be healed during 2020 because we have the combination of Saturn and Pluto together. The emotions, the classic emotions in Chinese medicine of anger, fear, anxiety, grief, and worry. So everything that's negative is coming up for our personal healing. And again, we have that opportunity only once every 500 years. So, you know, we astrologers knew something big was going to happen when we saw this aspect in the sky in 2020 in January. We didn't say it's specific to the event, but we knew that whatever would be happening in 2020 would be relative to some sort of structure of society. Transformation, we call it the year of transformation. What is transformation? It is when we take one substance, add a second substance to create a third substance. It's like alchemy. So we're now living through that time. And the worldwide pandemic is reflecting this initial Capricorn lineup. And again, those collective experiences in various degrees are bubbling up to the surface like lava bubbling up to be expelled by the volcano. Why this time frame, Passover and Easter, why is that a significant time of healing? Because the full moon that takes place after the spring equinox, and it's shown here in the grid, is a time when the sun and the moon are opposite to each other, and when we are able to see in the dark. All full moons give us an opportunity for illumination and to have a different perspective of being able to look at something in a different way. Now, as I'm recording this on the 12th of April, there have been many signs amongst many countries that the apex of the contagion and the disease is beginning to flatten somewhat. For example, in Spain, as of this date, they're making plans to reopen some of the commerce there. All right, so things have been bubbling up to the surface so we can see with new eyes during this first full moon after the first of spring. But this full moon that we're experiencing during the Holy Week is really born from the new moon of 3/24. Because when we have the new moon that took place on the 24th of March, this particular new moon had relevancy to healing itself, because the new moon back then was right next to this little guy called Chiron. Now, Chiron is an asteroid. Chiron, I'm going to talk a lot about Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer, and you can make an argument that a lot of the healers on the front lines of this pandemic have been wounded, right? Not enough protective equipment, not enough support. And so we're sending our prayers and our thoughts to all those doctors and nurses and military personnel and first responders, the EMTs, everyone who's on the first line of defense. Those are our healers, but they have been going through some form of wounding themselves. All right, so let's talk about Chiron. What does that represent? It's the wounded healer. It's this comet or asteroid that's very unique. It has a very erratic orbit. It doesn't go around very systematically. Sometimes it slows, sometimes it goes backwards, sometimes it goes forward, but it has an approximate time frame of an orbit of 50 years. So that's why age 50-ish, it could be age 47 to age 52, it's a very significant time for each of us to go through our individual healing. So Chiron in our charts represents our deepest wound, right? So we're going to talk about that. In mythology, Chiron was a centaur, he was a healer, he was a teacher. He could not heal himself, however. So now Chiron moved into the sign of Aries back in 2018. It wiggled back and forth a little bit, but it's clearly in the sign of Aries until 2027. And that's why I just mentioned folks who were born between 1968, 69 through 77, they would have their Chiron return during these years, sometime between 2018 and 2027. That 50-ish time frame is when you basically navigate your own personal destiny. You're no longer young, but you're no longer old. You start thinking about your own mortality, the legacy you want to leave when you do leave this earthly coil. So somewhere in your chart is Aries. We want to put a very strong spotlight on Aries in our charts right now, friends, okay? If you don't know astrology, if you're new to astrology, I say pause. You want to discover where Aries falls in your chart, because that is where you're doing your own personal healing. To find where Aries falls in your chart, I would invite you to go to my homepage at my website. In the top right section, it says Discover Your Personal Astrology. It will give you some links. You put in your birth information, ta-da, and then you'll have your chart, and you can discover where Aries falls. So in 2020, that is the area where you're healing some wound, and the chart is divided up into 12 sections. So we're going to go through all 12 sections, and you can see what your personal wound is and how you're healing it. Okay, Chiron and Aries. The global sentence for Chiron and Aries for all of us on the planet is self-healing. Heal thyself first, right? Recognize you have a wound, an insecurity, a fear, an anxiety, a grief, an anger that needs to come up to the surface to be healed. So collectively, this rare Chiron phase in Aries is an immense healing period. And it's a time of a major positive energy shift for our entire planet, because we're awakening to abuse that we've either suffered or that we have instilled upon someone else. So this goes on to 2027. So we take some time, but it's really strong in 2020. The wound of Aries, because Aries is the singularity of the independent individual. Aries essentially means me, me, me. My needs, my wants, my individuality, my potency, my sense of self. Everyone has to have a little bit of an ego, right? So where you find Aries, you find yourself percolating with a sense of me, 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 me. And so Aries, as the first sign, is motivation and drive and identity. It can be very impatient. We need to have that spark of the independent individual somewhere in our charts. But basically, all of us collectively, because Chiron is in Aries, is dealing with a narcissistic wound. What type of wound? That's all about me. It's all about me. You know, having been in the psychological, astrological, and social work field for some 30-something years, I have never heard so much interest and information about narcissism, right? It's like the disease du jour in the past 5-6 years. And I think that's because we are all becoming aware that all of us have a band of narcissism, perhaps where Aries falls in our chart. So that's where we're feeling this disarray and this fraying and this difficulty. All right, let's get to be a little bit more specific to your charts. And then I'm going to try to help you find where Chiron falls in your chart, because congruently with wherever Aries is in your chart, Aries, Chiron, right now, being healed, we also have the triggering of Chiron in our individual charts. So there's a lot to kind of process. And again, I would invite you to figure out using any app, my astrology on my, see, me, my website, but there's tons of wonderful astrology apps out there. You want to find where your own personal Chiron falls. So the virus crisis has thrown light on each of our vulnerabilities. No matter how safe you are, even if you're not in the contagion factor, we're still feeling very vulnerable indeed, because we don't have control over what's happening in the structure of the external life in our governments and communities. But this vulnerability is not one size fits all, of course. So during, again, the first full moon after the spring equinox, we know that the Holy Week time symbolically is a time of sacrifice, release, and rebirth. And we know that Passover and Easter have that in common, right? These are both holidays which bring up the idea of release and rebirth, whether it be with Passover, with the idea of freedom of the Israelites from the Egyptians, from Pharaoh, or if it's freedom of Jesus the Christ who dies and is resurrected. It's all about freedom and release and letting go of the ego, letting go of the self. So astrologically, the symbolism is Aries, which is me, and the full moon is Libra, which is we. So this Libra archetype in 2020 is being reflected by the virus crisis, right? These are some of the slogans out there. I mean, I just got back from a little mini drive, and even on the throughway signs, all of them are saying stuff like alone together, physically separated, spiritually connected, stronger together. We will get through this. Individuals will get through it together. And here's something that's been in our mindset. The virus is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how famous you are, how rich you are, if you're a politician like the Prime Minister of England, you can be infected by the virus. It's a great equalizer. All right, back to the chart of Holy Week, the full moon. Notice what and who the moon is talking to. The moon is talking to Juno. See this pretty little girl with the big hair? That's called Juno, the asteroid which represents relationships. So relationships, the way out of our pain is by relating to other people. Whoops. Okay, Juno is the goddess of relationship. And see, there's the full moon, 18 degrees of Libra opposite the sun. There's Chiron hanging out here. That was relative to the new moon. And so the full moon is giving us eyes to see, with the emphasis on relating and taking care of our brothers and our sisters. Relationship is the key to our individual healing. All right, so we all need to heal the negative of Aries. One big trait of Aries is impatience, irritation, and anger. So as our anger comes up, and it will all year, let's face it, especially perhaps this particular week, we want to look at it, name it, release it. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die. The Buddha. He who angers you conquers you. So by your chart, we want to see where is that Aries falling in your personal chart. Is Aries in your first house? So you're really, really working on healing in 2020. It's not all about me. Or if you're an Aries sun sign, my pain in my life and my sense of self may be really threatened, but you want to release to the best of your ability my self-obsession. All right, my self-obsession. Okay. Chiron, or if you have Aries in the second house, is about money. Are you fearful of finances? Are you fearful of your possessions? Are you feeling not good enough? Issues of security, issues of dependability or loyalty. If you've got Aries in the second house, that means Chiron is floating through that area. You're really, really, really concerned about the material, and own it. Be okay with that. All right. Gemini, your words, if you have Aries in the third house, it's about the idea, or again, if you have strong Gemini sun or in the third house, you're not being heard properly. Your wound, if this Chiron in Aries is floating through your third house, you may be feeling you're not being taken seriously with your words. Or perhaps you have sibling issues. You may be feeling as though your brothers and sisters aren't taking your words seriously. And you may have difficulty even thinking, or perhaps having problems with indecisiveness or good old-fashioned immaturity. If you have Aries in your fourth house, feeling so much that you're overwhelmed by your feelings, feeling insecure, feeling that you aren't able to fit in, that your family is strange, abandonment, food issues. The family is preventing you from having a goal. Again, if you have Chiron in the fourth house, natally, you may have that wound all the time that you're working on in this lifetime. Speaking of Aries going through the fourth house, here's someone we all know and love, the US of A. This is the Sibley chart, the only chart that I will ever use for many, many, many reasons, because those beautiful Freemasons who founded this country used Ebenezer Sibley, an astrologer in London, to create this particular chart for our country. Because, oh, that Ebenezer was so smart. He made sure the country had 3 irreconcilable types of parts of the chart, so that there would not be just one leader. There would be 3 parts of the government that wouldn't get along, so that we would have a sustainable government. Well, in any case, that's another lecture. But here, take a look at the US's chart. Our Chiron, the Aries part of the US chart, is Aries on the fourth house, home and family. We feel like we are losing our home and family. We're locked up in home. There is Chiron. Chiron is coming up to a Chiron return in the US's chart. That's going to take a couple more years yet, but the you could say this, one of the ideals of the United States archetype is to have a home, right? You know, the dream of owning one's own home is very much reflected by this chart, that when we have a foundation, a lot of people have homes on their backs, like Cancer the crab. You know what the homes on the back are? RVs. The RV explosion, especially with people whose Pluto is in the sign of Cancer. It's not a new phenomenon. It's been on for a while. But the point is, we love our homes in the United States of America, right? So once every 50 years, we have Chiron moving through the home house and creating a wound. Can we keep our homes with this economy that's being decimated by the virus? On and on and on it goes. All right, if you do have this Aries part of your chart in the fifth house, your wound is about creativity and performance and the ability to have fun. You may be saying to yourself, man, I can hang in here with my house, but when can I go to those festivals or go out with my friends to the local bars and listen to music? My wound is I'm not able to be creative, perhaps. Okay. Virgo, sixth house. If Chiron's in your sixth house, you really may be very, very concerned and worried about your own physical health. That is even independent from the virus. All right. It's independent from the virus. You may be very worried about ways to take care of your physical self this year, transforming your self-care, perhaps adding on new supplements or new alternative care, maybe massage or acupuncture or something along these lines. Also, if Aries is in your sixth house, your wound might be connected with over-serving other people, being too good, too serviceable, or you might be super defensive when it comes to other people criticizing you. All right. The other wound might be overthinking or over-analysis. Libra or seventh house is the other, the partner. For example, if you're a Libra rising, you have Aries falling into your seventh house of marriage, relationship. If you're a Libra or Libra rising, this wound that's coming up for you is all those relationships that went south, all the people that got away, all the people that broke your heart, or perhaps you broke their heart. That's what you're healing, Libra or Libra rising. Okay, Scorpio or Scorpio rising, what you're healing right now with this Aries, Chiron, is your sexuality, your power, your manipulation. You're healing your need to control others. Let it go. You might not be able to control anyone, right? It's okay. You don't have to be the be all and end all, Scorpio. Maybe you just have to take a couple steps back and let things be released. You can't control death. This is the wound for Scorpio or Scorpio rising. Sagittarius, Or Sagittarius rising, that means your Aries is going through your ninth house, and you're saying to yourself, I want to have the freedom to travel. Oh my gosh, I need to travel more. I need to have my independence, my truth. Capricorn, if you're Capricorn or Capricorn rising, that Aries Chiron is going through your 10th house at some point in the next few years. And what you're trying to let go of and trying to heal is the wound of being the leader. Perhaps you have to push other people. Perhaps your wound is always being pushing other people aside, but maybe you have to push your need to lead aside during this Chironic time. Aquarius or Aquarius rising, you're trying to heal your relationship with others, groups. And you know what? If you're an Aquarius, you may also be wanting to heal your insecurity or your wound about being too different or being too out there. You might be feeling insecure about society or worried about society, or maybe you're insecure or the wound about technology. Like, I don't want to stay home and use Zoom. I don't know how to use it. That might be your wound, Aquarius. Pisces. If you're Pisces or Pisces rising, this energy is percolating in some ways with your spirituality. And you might be wanting to learn how to heal giving too much, sacrificing yourself too much, and being okay and accepting of your own psychic abilities. That would be your wound. I'm too psychic, I'm too sensitive. Heal that, Pisces. All right, so I want to leave you with this amazing poem, a poem that was making its way around the internet. Now, some people were saying that this poem was written in 1889 and it was released during the Spanish flu pandemic of 1917, but we have found that there really is a Kitty O'Mara. You can see it online. I want to quote her lovely poem because she was writing about healing way back when, on March 3rd, I think is when she released this. And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still. And they listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they have been healed. See, the cool thing about being the wounded healer, having wounds is good because when you heal them, you can stand under or understand other people's pain and become the wounded healer. So I wish for you brand new Easter blessings. Celebrate new life and fresh beginnings. Do the healing on yourself, do the healing with others, not just this week in April, but going beyond, because this is such a powerful, powerful year of transformation. I want to thank you for joining me for these tools for healing, and hope to meet with you sometime soon individually. Many blessings to you. Be well and keep on shining like the star you are.